Go live.
The views and opinions expressed by the guests of Sasquatch Experience do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the hosts, sponsors, or affiliates of the Sasquatch Experience. As always, listener discretion is advised.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sasquatch Experience. It's me, Sean the Fort Chop Forker, Henry May, James Baker's Sweaty Palm, and Vance Nesbitt. And before we came on the air, we were talking about Julia Child's flaky pot roast. And
so flaky.
I'm so glad that the intro started so we could have moved past that conversation. Guys, welcome back this week. Again, no guest for us, but we didn't plan to have one because I thought the four of us could talk a little bit. It was actually James's idea that we have a show to discuss, what the hell has changed in our thought processes since we've all been started in this field. And I thought, that'd be a hell of an interesting show. We are in season 3, as is indicated by the episode title, Change Perspectives, season of summer of the Sasquatch, and we're winding down here. Almost just a few weeks away from the beginning of September, guys. Can you believe that? The summer has just flown by.
Yes, it certainly has.
So aside from Julia Child's flaky pot roast, I guess...
You had to be there, folks. Trust me.
You had to be there. What did we talk about last week on the show?
I don't know. Was I there? Oh, that's right. I was there.
It was Vance almost got killed by a tornado in Chicago.
Yeah, that happened.
Which,
he's
of all
alive.
things you can be killed by in Chicago. Tornado is not one I pick up.
It's tornadoes and 9 millimeters. That's.
And then we spoke about your sighting.
Oh yeah. We talked about the Cook Forest creature.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Mr. and Mrs. A, who that's not their real name, but we just went with the first letter that was in the alphabet. So what the hell? That's what we
want to go with Mr. and Mrs. B.
Yeah, we didn't want to go with B. By the way, we have to watch out for the returning B apple crab dick. That gentleman is making his rounds again.
This.
Yes.
Don't be a C. B apple crab dick, folks, will be returning to the Sasquatch Experience at some point soon. For our Patreon subscribers, we will be hosting another watch along here very soon. We're going to be watching Primal Rage at the urging of James Baker. As you can see, he's so excited about that.
My God. It's got so much quality. It's
a 5-star.
It's got hunters. It's got Native American lore. Blonde girl only wearing a shirt. I mean, it's got everything.
It does have everything you could want out of a Bigfoot horror film. We did, of course, do a watch along with Exists. And we have one of Abominable also coming up at some point in the near future. So your Patreon, you're getting a lot of extra content coming your way. And it starts for as little as $2 a month. $2 gets you to join the Hollers Club. And we do have a new member of the club this week. Kevin has signed up to become a member of the Hollers Club. We thank you, Kevin, for your support. He follows us. He's been quite an active listener. He messages me about once a week, likes the show, always taking me around to places when he's on the road, show me the different Sasquatch-related items he's finding or places he's going to. So, Kevin, we appreciate that. Thank you very much. And thanks for becoming one of our newest Patreons. How about that, guys?
No.
All right.
Greatly appreciated, Kevin.
Yes, Kevin.
Absolutely.
Kevin Casey.
It keeps Henry in ding-dongs and ho-hos.
And for $4, you can be part of Henry's fans only group.
Looking to be the fifth. Okay.
And that's where we lose them. Good night, folks. We'll see you next week.
that ends it. Yeah.
So tonight, as you can see, as we talked about in the title, change perspectives. And since, James, you were the one who prompted this whole dialogue, why don't you start off? What prompted you to go down this path with us, and what's changed your mind, or what's changed in your mind?
So at first, a lot of the stuff I was doing, I was reading the books, and I was kind of getting an idea of what was going on. Mothman is a perfect example. I know it's not Sasquatch related, but the concepts are there. I really didn't understand a lot of the Mothman stuff until you went to Point Pleasant. Until you saw where these things happen. Until you were able to wander around and see how, at night this might have been the way it looked and this, whatever. We talk a lot about people that say, oh, well, I saw Sasquatch in a clearing 300 feet away, and like no one else did. Well, if you're in that clearing, you have a better idea what they're talking about, because from certain angles you can't see jack. So I think really what my perspective has changed is like it's really nice to learn basic.
Get us a little closer, James. We're losing your audio.
Oh, it's really nice to learn a lot about the cryptids and things like that. But honestly, get out there and try to be in the area that they were found in, or at least the general area. It'll give you a whole new perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That is a solid point, and it took forever for that to happen in a lot of these instances and situations, especially with reports, guys, that when you get them and they come in and they're like from 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
How do you as the researcher today go back and investigate a report, especially at times when you have a witness that may not be as cooperative or physically able to take you back to that area?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get there? How do you see it? I guess that's one of the things I always kind of liked about finding Bigfoot, is that they took you back to the area, the encounter, as close as they could, and you were able to take measurements up against the trees or signs.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to get some physical validation of the things that you did see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important when you're following up on these reports and sightings.
Right.
And the older they are, the harder it becomes, because sometimes those places just don't look the same anymore. When I was in Keystone State Forest or Keystone State Park with Altman, when we had a situation that happened in 2005, the summer of 2005, I went back 10 years later, and the whole area was different. It had been logged, and this happens, and you lose not just any kind of potential evidence that you could have collected at that point. 20 years later, you're not going to collect much anyhow, but you even lose the anecdotal stuff. How could you, get the legitimacy of how far something was away, or estimate the height of something when the comparison's just not there anymore.
Right.
So I guess that's a good point, James.
Well, to James's point too, we've probably all had an experience that's not so Bigfoot related, but just historical, and to visit a historical site where some activity or historical moment took place. And when you plant your feet in that spot, it puts a whole different perspective other than what a documentary could do. And exactly what he said, Point Pleasant, again, it does that for me as an example. So when you're there and you can walk to the spot where the bridge collapsed and the lore is, and to where the theater is, and you walk the streets and you see and meet the people and the attitude and the culture, it puts you in the moment when you understand what the stories are being told, and it's a whole different thing than what any documentary can provide for you. It gets close, but until you're actually boots on the ground, it does paint an entirely different picture for you.
Yeah, it makes it real. Henry, what do you think?
Well, as far as changed perspectives, I used to be strictly no-kill, and I've become what they call pro-specimen. In other words, yes, we should bring one in.
I hear somebody's background.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's
Okay,
got
Baker,
some TV
that's you.
playing. You think
That's all right,
after
he
all these
caught
weeks
on.
we'd get it. But anyhow, no, pro specimen. That's a fair point, Henry. How do you think one should be taken at this point? How would you prefer it?
Well, now if it was me, I would only kill one in self defense if it was me.
Do you think you'd had that much of a chance, to be honest? I think you're going to get killed, Henry. That's what I think. I wouldn't even try to do it in self-defense. I think you're going to get rolled up into a ball and kicked into the next county, my friend. I think you should be very careful with that one. No, I think pro specimen's fair, though, all kidding aside. Self-defense is a fair way to do it. I think the larger point is it's going to take a body. I think you and I, we started this out back in the day. We were very no kill, and it's not that I want to physically go out and kill one because it's just not going to happen. But that doesn't mean I'm going to begrudge a specimen from having to be taken. Preferably, I would like a live one. But what's the chances of that happening? I mean, if there was a way to get one, if it couldn't be taken alive, I would prefer to see one that would be taken as, a deceased specimen, something that, still had some, scientific potential to it, but enough that, you wouldn't feel, really terrible because you took its life.
So what's the consensus in the room here of how many times has that happened already, that there are those that have a specimen, probably understand, I don't want to go down a conspiracy theory rabbit hole, but do we think that may have already happened? Because I do.
Hell, I think it's happened, but where's the proof of it? Back in the day, like I'm 100 years old. Back in the day, there was a story from, I think it was Nevada, Henry, is that right? Where there was a wildfire out there, and one of them got burned, and they were able to get the creature and Brian, sorry. And it was treated for its burns, and they called in a vet to, help take, lines and get blood out of it and everything. But there was nothing further that came out of the story. They loaded it into an ambulance. It's in, I think it's in Tom Powell's book, isn't it?
It is. The Battle Mountain, Nevada.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's a great story because I think there's truth to that. But how could you prove it? Are there other specimens that were probably taken? We've heard stories, and Henry, you could probably elaborate on this more than I could. Mount St. Helens, when Mount St. Helens erupted, and there were stories about these things being lifted, not the live creatures, but out via helicopter. Do you remember that at all, Hen?
I do. Yes, there have been rumors for years that the military supposedly picked these things up, these bodies up in nets and helicopters, and took them away somewhere.
Right.
But where to?
And why?
Go ahead.
Like why? Like from a point of view from the government, unless there's some secret stuff that they get from it, or it's got like a magic, like rhino horn or something. I mean, at what point is it really worth lying to us? Aliens, I get it because of technologies and stuff like that. They don't want one person to have it; they want to keep it, or the rich decide. But what would keeping a Bigfoot from the average person do for anybody?
Well, it could disrupt a lot of things. Go ahead,
right?
Vince.
No, I've heard a lot of that question asked, and I've heard a lot of plausible answers given to that. And one of the answers is if it is even close enough with any DNA strand to Homo sapien, you have to give that civil rights to that creature. And if that's the case, now, you can be charged for murder. You have to give land rights, and
only if it exists.
Only if it exists, right? Well, if it does exist, you're going to change the culture entirely as far as the DNR is concerned. So maybe they just want to, put the brakes on it a little bit and keep it hush hush and keep things status quo.
this government's not going to give a damn thing to anybody else. Let's be honest. It spent
No.
years taking things away from Native Americans and their
Right.
real people, to
Right.
say nothing of,
Oh
you know,
my
how,
God.
you know, a species that's not even recognized by science or barely recognized by science, let alone as a culture or as recognized as a people, that's years down the road. I think it disrupts religious beliefs. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to one thing: the almighty dollar. Right?
Oh, it is
you
the
will,
almighty dollar. You'd shut down
you
the logging
will-
industry like Feltner just mentioned. You would.
yeah. The
Not-
logging
not-
industry goes bye. You could say goodbye to paper. You
Yep.
could start investing in those
Billions
bidets
of
now
dollars.
because you're not going to
Right.
get no toilet paper.
Right.
You
No,
think the shortage is
billions.
bad now?
Yeah.
What else is there? Religion. I already said that, but also fracking, natural gas. Right. So you disrupt a lot of industries and you put a lot of people out of work. And then you have the larger concern that if these things are around and they've been sharing our backyards with us, you know, is this where all the hell those missing people went?
Right. And then do
And
you
then what
start,
does-
the lunatic fringe of let's go hunting?
Look,
and
man, the
you'll have
lunatic fringe is
accidents left
here.
and right. Yeah.
The lunatic fringe is here already. I see it every day.
Yeah. No, we
In
know
fact,
that.
some of
but
us
I
might
think
be
would
part of
ramp
it.
up.
Let's be interesting. We could be flipping crazy. Here we are on a Monday night at 9:16 talking about giant apes that may or may not exist. To 3/4 of the population, we're as fruity as a nut cake, right?
Yeah.
A nutty as a fruit cake. I just did a William Shatner.
A nut
there.
cake.
Yeah.
I prefer the nut cake over the fruit
Yeah.
cake.
That's
Yeah,
what
well,
I heard.
Yeah. Oh. There we go again.
Yeah.
But
Well,
there's some serious disruption there. But pro specimen, as Henry puts it, is a nicer way of saying pro kill. But if we could take one that's alive instead of putting the hammer to one, it would satisfy some things. But would it answer all the questions? No, and we won't be doing a talk show about it anymore. We'll be doing something else because we, are now going to be kicked to the curb, and the real scientists will be coming in. And how the hell would these real scientists have any bearing to come into a field that they've, acknowledged publicly that didn't exist, and we're all flipping crazy, but here comes Mr. PhD with his black bag hacking these things up like a serial killer and putting them on display at the Smithsonian. And we don't have any say in that whatsoever.
right.
I will chain myself to one of those hairy son of a bitches and say,
wanna
leave my
see
squatch
that.
alone. I will do it.
Oh, I
will
hope it's
do
a
it.
patty. I hope it's a patty.
I hope so too. Leave my big hairy woman alone, okay? Because
Oh,
it's just wrong.
yeah.
It's just
that
really
whole
wrong.
statement is wrong. So, okay.
So pro specimen, Henry's gone from no kill to pro specimen, and I guess I've changed my mind to I don't care. Like, I know that sounds a little callous, but 25 years of saying let's all be friends and not kill one hasn't proven it exists. We haven't gotten any better photos. Haven't got this whole eDNA thing's kind of cool. That's kind of changed my mind on some things. I guess you can pull DNA samples from the environment around you. That's pretty neat, but it's still not going to complete the picture or tell the story.
No.
And then you're
You'll
going to have
you'll just be left with more questions than answers.
And let's be honest, we've done more job screwing up DNA reports on our Maury Povich show, so let's not say that we've even
That was
gotten
my
that science
solution.
down for a fact.
But that was my solution. Just leave it up to the Povich show to figure all this out.
We'd probably get better results. Their DNA tests
maybe.
work out 100% of the time, right? Will the man in seat 312 please stand up? You're the father. We got that when you walked in the room. Just pulled that eDNA out of the air,
Yep. Well, that's how that works.
But that's the future. And we were talking before we came on the air, Henry and I, about how there's so much out there now, information-wise, and so much more than what in the early days of this, especially in the infancy of the internet. You would have to wait every 2 to 5 years for a new Bigfoot show to pop up, and But there's so information out there now. How do you take the good information and delineate it from the bad information anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Who the hell's to say what's good information, what's bad information? Because,
Right.
I think at times I find myself, for me, which upsets me a little bit, as I like to consider myself a reasonable guy, I find myself either way teeter-tottering on the fence. On some things that I really have no business teeter-tottering about. Like in the past, my convictions would be firm in those things, and right now I'm just not so sure.
Right.
You would have asked me 15 years ago about gifting, I'd have pissed on your shoe and laughed at you. But, there are some legitimate people out there saying some interesting things. And if that leans to Bigfoot or whatever this particular Bigfoot is, because there could be more than one type of species, right? Lumped into this cryptozoological creature we call Bigfoot. If it's out there doing those things, who's to say it's not some kind of creature with some sort of culture or understanding? We just don't know. So I guess if changing perspectives, right? Change perspectives. I'm kind of on that fence. Now, I don't think it happens nearly as much. James and I were walking along the creek one day, hand in hand, frolicking, and we saw these giant rock stacks all along the creek. And guess what? They weren't put there by a Bigfoot. They were made by boys and girls, playing at the creek.
All
so
right.
we have to be very careful at the same time to not minimize the legitimate gifting, if there is such a thing, to things you just see every day. That
Right.
goes with tree structures and everything else.
No, absolutely. Jordan here asked a really interesting question.
Hi, Jordan.
Do you think there is a lot of danger to the person
Hey,
that finds a body of a Sasquatch or Nessie, whichever, a cryptid? That person most likely would be targeted as well. As a government conspiracy, would they be targeted? Yeah, I'm thinking,
No.
maybe like a Men in Black type of scenario, but maybe not to that degree.
No, I think they have to worry about whack jobs like us or worse than us,
In
seeking
the
them out and
community,
harming
right,
them. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
I think that it would really matter if what they saw was legitimate, and it would also matter who they are. The higher you are up, like if you pick somebody like me, an average person, and I said, "Hey, I went outside and I saw a
You're not
Bigfoot
average.
in South Williamsport." I don't think a government agency is going to do that. But if I saw one where they think there already is one, or there's something going on that they don't want anybody, it's like kind of like, like with Area 51 and some of these places, there are places like there's a water reservoir up the road from me. If I said I
Yes,
saw
there
something
is.
there, the government would shut me down because they wouldn't want people wandering over there. It had nothing to do with whether what I saw, whether I'm a legitimate scientist, whether I'm actually whatever. A good portion of it would be is like, we need to shut this guy down because we don't need wanderers in an area we do not want anybody.
So he's saying location, location, location.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
could
Go ahead, Vince.
Go ahead. Nope. You need to finish.
That's what she said.
Yes.
Go on.
No, I'm just saying, and it also depends too on who that person is, like you said, but somebody with a bit of a more celebrity, like the Theodore Roosevelt writing, people took that as golden because why? He was, a president. He wouldn't lie about something like this and wrote it in his journals. If you're a talk show host that has national, public listeners or television host, and you had an encounter with this, it probably would put a whole different light on how any agency might approach, or even the community might approach that person if they, had a specimen or an encounter that way.
I think Jordy's, though, to his point, he's talking about somebody that has the body. They found the body. And I do think that person becomes a target. And you have to be prepared for that. I think episodes back, we talked about having some sort of plan if anything like this was to ever happen.
Right.
And, you should have a plan like that if you're going to be an active investigator, and that's the potentiality of something you think is going to happen. Have a plan. But
take a finger and run.
Again, I think you have to, consider that you talk about celebrity, who you are. might make you a larger target.
Mm-hmm. No, very
Dr.
true.
Meldrum, for instance, if he takes
Mm-hmm.
a Bigfoot body, it might be, have a lot of questions there for old Doc Meldrum.
Mm-hmm. No, very true. Feltner makes another good point. Bigfoots are real. People are fake. This is so true.
Yeah, people suck too. It's just how it is.
Yeah, this is true.
I'm just flicking through the banners there.
Oh,
trying
you
to find
flick
one
all
I
you
like.
want. Yes,
Hey,
flick all
you know what?
want.
We gotta make that money somehow, guys. It's important to keep this show alive for $2 a month,
Yes.
as little as $2 a month. But change perspectives. So we've got Pro Specimen, we've got James Baker. The point he made, which I forget because we got caught up on the Pro Specimen. I'm sorry.
Oh, you said there'd be a quiz and you failed. Really?
Hey, I just show up and talk. That's what my job was supposed to be.
We'll go
Somehow
back
it
to my
became much
beer,
more.
what people like.
Right.
It's a bud. That's not really a beer. That's just flavored water.
Mm-hmm.
Vance, what about you? What's changed for you, my friend?
It's a little bit different of an experience because I don't want to touch into what our next week's show is going to be. I'm going to stay away from that. So what has changed for me, this takes me down an entirely different avenue from what we're talking about here. But, when I first really stepped both feet into the community was way back at the very beginning of Saskron, when Shannon was doing the show. And even before that introduction, I heard Wes's story on Coast to Coast AM. And that story was creepy within itself. Whether it's real or not doesn't matter. It was the story. And I noticed as I listened to more and more stories of people's encounters, because it really started to blossom at that point, where people now have a platform to share their most intense encounters. It's kind of waned off because most of those stories are out there. I noticed that in my daily life, things went to hell. I don't know why. I couldn't put my finger exactly on it, but things didn't go right in my life at all. For every time, once a week, I might listen to something, I noticed the following day, everything was bad. It wasn't because I was distracted because of what I heard. It was just this weird anomaly that happened. And I couldn't put my finger on it, so I backed out for a matter of a couple of months, and I noticed in that couple of months that didn't happen. And so when I stepped back in, I had to make a promise to myself that I'll ingest what I feel I can ingest and maybe not wrap myself so much into somebody's intense encounter. And I noticed with that different attitude, things kind of changed a little bit. It's like I had to put up an invisible metaphorical barrier. I don't know. It sounds really strange. I understand that, and I might get poked at for that, but I don't care. I'm putting it out there anyway. And now, when we have these discussions, life is good. So I keep that barrier up from getting drawn so far into somebody else's experience. And is there something more to it than that, or is this all just coincidence for a matter of 6 months? Once a week for 6 months, and this kept happening. I just couldn't put my finger on it, but that's why I stepped backwards to, stop the bad effect, and it happened. So
It could be a mind over matter thing.
it could very well be. It could be a psychological thing. It could be any number of reasons why, but
Well,
it's
you
just
have to
an
look at-
experience.
And I listen to Sasquatch Chronicles. I don't have a problem with it. I think there's a lot of interesting stories that come from there. Wes asks the question. He pretty much lets them tell their story, though, and that's fine. A lot of them have a negative feeling, a negative connotation to it, right? So when you're putting yourself into the negative thought and process, you do become, susceptible to negative things, especially when
Right.
your mindset's already geared towards that, right? I don't let it get to me that much anymore. I think there was a point in time where you could say I had a mania. An obsession, an unhealthy fixation with this, and it did interfere in aspects of your life because you get dialed in and focused on something that's really not that important. It is. Don't get me wrong, it is important, but it's not that important.
Right.
do we want to be the people to solve this mystery? I think anybody involved in this field wants to be the one that, gets the kudos. Is it going to happen? Probably not. And once you accept that and you just start enjoying this as a way to, become part of a scientific field, meet new people, you get the social aspect of it, and you don't get trapped into the negative cycle, it's all good. It's all good. You just can't let it get to you. Like Jenny King just said, love Jenny. Gotta love Jenny. Sometimes
Jenny.
you just need to listen to your inner self or your higher self. And that's the truth. You got to keep yourself surrounded by people like Jamie and Jenny, too. Pretty positive people.
No, that.
And if you don't have folks like that, get your own because they're mine. So
Right.
I'll fight you. Well, looks like I went over past our break, folks. We are going to take a quick commercial break. Not a commercial break, a news break. Stick right back, and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip. And as soon as I hit this button, we're going to go to our break. Stay tuned. Shake them if you got to. Smoke them if you got them. We'll be right back.
Sasquatch Experience, Stranger Than Fiction, News and Stories is brought to you by our patrons. For as little as $2 per month, you can become part of the experience. Just visit patreon.com/Sasquatch Experience. And Dr. Squatch Soap. Smell amazing, be amazing. 100% handcrafted, 100% money back guarantee. Just click on the Dr. Squatch Soap banner right below for some huge savings. And now, page 1. Back on August 13th, Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency said wildlife officers Dylan Maynard, Ben Davis, and Barry Baird were dispatched to a farm pond in Bradley County along the Appalachian Mountain chain on a report of a loose alligator. The officers ended up wrangling a 3-foot gator. No, Bradley County isn't the alligator historic range, the agency said in a Facebook post. Tennessee isn't historically home to alligators, but the agency said in 2018 that wild gators were starting to naturally make their way to the southern border state. The agency said the alligator is believed to be an unwanted pet that was dumped into the wild. The alligator was taken to a new home at a zoo. Henry, stop dumping your gators in the pond. Page 2. Also on Friday the 13th, volunteer rescuer in South Carolina came to the rescue of a kitten that fell off a bridge down into the marsh below. The Charleston County Volunteer Rescue Squad said in its Instagram post that the Charleston Police Department Animal Service officers responded to the Stono River Bridge on a report of a loose kitten wandering on the bridge. The officers arrived to find a kitten had fallen into the marsh below. Firefighters were summoned to the scene, but determined that the kitten was too far out for a safe rescue. A CCVRS airboat was called to the bridge, and rescuers were able to safely pluck the small kitten out of the marsh. The kitten was taken to the Charleston Humane Society. If somebody adopts this cat and doesn't name it Marcia, I'm going to be really pissed. Page 3. A Florida man's dashboard camera was rolling when a bolt of lightning struck his brand new 2020 Ford Ranger truck and put the vehicle into intensive care. Now, the only reason why I'm sharing this story is because the news reporter on television mispronounced the person's name and pronounced it Jack Forker. His name is actually Jack Foraker. Said he was approaching Big Carlos Pass in Lee County while on his way home to Estero when he drove into the storm. I saw a few people that were just stragglers leaving the beach, and I said to myself, those are the type of people who get hit by lightning because they're just leaving too late, and continued going. Turns out they weren't the people that were going to get hit by lightning, Foraker said. Foraker's dashboard camera was recording when the bolt of lightning struck his vehicle, causing it to completely shut down. It sounded like a shotgun blast to the back of my truck. And yeah, it was pretty scary, he said. My windshield wipers stopped, lost my power brakes and power steering, and of course everything electronic was blown out. The driver was not injured and was able to pull over to the side of the road. The truck, which would only had 4,000 miles on it, was badly damaged. So again, the name is pronounced Foraker, not Forker. Foraker, not Forker. Thank you. Page 4, not Forker. And a bizarre story of the week came the way of Australia, where authorities are on the hunt for a teenager who forced an adorable quokka to smoke from an e-cigarette and then actually posted footage of the abhorrent stunt online. The jaw-dropping incident is believed to have unfolded at a protective nature preserve known as Rottnest Island, a popular destination for tourists as it is home to a colony of the cuddly-looking wallabies, which have become accustomed to humans in their habitat. While that normally allows for fun photo opportunities, in this instance, the young woman took things too far by tricking a quokka into thinking her vape pen was food. Should she be caught, the teenager could face up to 5 years in prison and $50,000 for her ill-conceived attempt at internet stardom. See, kids, smoking is bad. And our final page of fun fact. Henry VIII, and no, not Henry B. May IV, but Henry VIII, had all 4 of his grooms of stool knighted, the people in charge of wiping his butt. So see, Henry, you never know. You might come around with a few more generations of butt wipers. Thanks for listening to the Sasquatch Experience, stranger than fiction, news, and stories. Let's get back to the conversation.
Thanks, Vance. That was weird. Very weird. I'm Sean Foraker. I'm kidding. I'm Sean Foraker. And welcome back to Sasquatch Experience. He's Henry VIII with the stool wipers, James Baker. We're all back here. I hope you guys enjoyed a brief respite while we were able to get things going back here again. So as we were talking before the break, which I don't even remember what we were talking about because things get wild here. My memory's terrible tonight. What the hell is wrong with me? What were we talking
Jamie,
about?
It's not fake news. You're right. It's not fake news. Everything we tell is real.
Vance, answer
no.
my damn question. What were we talking about? What were
We were talking about just my experience with
your feelings,
getting involved into the whole Sasquatch thing and getting way too wrapped into it and then noticing how negative things happen. And you brought up a good point too, because there are those that I'm not going to say they're the woo, but it's closer to that where they say, oh, you've got yourself into an energy field and that's why it was so negative on you. Okay, maybe it attached, maybe it didn't. I don't know. I mean, I love physics. I know a lot about physics. We just haven't proven that yet.
Let's get physics, Cole.
Yeah, physics, Cole.
Physics school.
Yeah.
There we go. Anyhow, I'm gonna.
Good night,
for God's
everybody.
sake, someone hit the mute button. Okay. Anyhow, perspective change, guys. Here's one for you: habituation. That used to be a really dirty word. Look at Henry. He even knows right there. He's surprised I didn't reach through the screen and slap myself. I used to not really care for that particular situation, and I had a lot of negative thoughts about it because at the time, the people that were promoting habituation encounters were batshit crazy, and still are.
In some
The
cases,
habituation situation. Yeah.
Yes, they still are crazy, and but let's be very clear. I think there are some people that have repeat activity, and why I get hesitant to use the term habituation is I don't think these people encourage it. It just
Well,
happens. We go back to last week when we talked
Right.
to Mr. and Mr. and Mrs. A, right? Like they had ongoing encounters over years, but they didn't encourage it. Yeah, they did things in their normal routine that some could consider would be encouraging, but they didn't answer the door and give it garlic when it knocked, and they just didn't have these, they didn't create beds for it in barns or anything else. So
Yeah.
so I just saw a comment about Henry's noodle. Henry, what were you doing during the break? I thought the camera.
It's the ramen noodles.
The ramen noodles. Oh, okay. Ooh, I got that sound file from Steve Calls, too, so
No.
you never know when that's going to make an appearance.
No.
But there are people that have repeat encounters that I don't think are habituation.
Right.
And again, I reference Tom Powell's book, The Locals, a lot because I think next to Sasquatch, the Apes Among Us, The Locals is probably one of my top favorite books and that's been written on the subject because it does dive into some of the more interesting aspects of the research field. And I have changed some opinion on it. But I guess some of the stories, Henry, the deaf girl that had the repeat visitation at her home, it carried her father back from his car accident. That was notated in the book. Some altruistic behaviors I think is okay.
Yeah.
That starts bordering on the line of fantasy for me about what I'm willing to accept. But how do you dispel it? How
Right.
do you prove it that these things aren't happening? And then you have witnesses that I've interviewed over the years that kind of have a similar encounter going on. But it doesn't mean I think everybody that tells me this is happening, it really is, because it's just not. There are some people that want attention and will take advantage of any situation that they possibly can. And it doesn't mean they're going to get famous or they're trying to hoax somebody. Maybe they're just lonely people and they need, they feel this story is the way to bring people in. But
Right.
Henry, what do you
So-
think about it? Like, you've been here as long as I have, longer than me. Between the two of us, we got 50 years of research or more. What do you think about habituation, and is it a thing, and how has your mind changed about it?
Well, I spent 3 weeks with Janice Carter back in 2008.
And held hostage
And of
for another
course-
6 months.
And of course, she was very much, she still is very much a proponent of the habituation deal. She believed that the Bigfoot named Fox actually followed them to Ohio.
I know.
Wow. That's a long trek.
From Tennessee, from Tennessee, mind you.
Yeah, like I said, that's a long trek. Yeah, that's a Forrest Gump thing there.
Well, again, though, I've met Janice. Henry, you've met Janice.
Yes.
She kind of entrapped me at a corner at a Bigfoot conference, and I wouldn't change my opinion then, and I'm not changing opinion now. I think she's a nice person. I don't think I've ever said she's not a nice person, have I, Henry?
Yeah. No.
I just think when it comes to picnics, she's short a few sandwiches, and that's okay. It doesn't mean she's not nice, but I just don't believe her, and it's whatever. At this point, all these years, you're not going to change my mind. She's got no evidence to the contrary. And, Mary Green was a researcher that was, in my intents and purposes, a very, another nice lady, but was misled and bought things hook, line, and sinker. And, in a habituation scenario, when you've got this going, the only thing you really do have is your credibility. And when you blow it time and time again, it's kind of hard to keep researchers interested in it.
No, very true. And, I think, Henry brought up, or one of you brought it up. See, I'm starting to forget too. The involuntary habituation.
Yeah.
Like you brought up, Sean, with the pies on the windowsill last week. Yeah, it's an involuntary thing and something strange happens. And, there's been the stories of the dog food bags in the barn and they're emptied out and gone. And yet it keeps happening and not putting two and two together until there's an event that happens where it's either seen or an encounter, however you want to phrase it. Involuntary. How many stories have I heard with chicken coops? And the chickens go missing, one or two, in the evening, what's happening? Okay, we're going to blame it on the fox. We're going to blame it on the wolf. We're going to blame it on the coyote, whatever. But the evidence didn't seem to go back to that's what was doing it. So
I tell you, Vance, the one that's changed that, the story that really brought me to this, and I have to read the locals in because I don't know if it's in his book or not. We should have just brought Tom Powell on the show, Henry, since
Yes.
I've referenced it so much tonight. Make that happen, by the way. My eye just went wonky. Sorry. The story out of Hanabi, Oklahoma, Henry, where they had that.
That is in Tom's book, by the way. The Siege of Hanabi. Yeah.
Now, I first became familiar with that through the BFRO website, but the book, The Locals, really expounds a lot more on it, and I just found that whole situation to be interesting and what it was. Henry, go ahead and give an overview of that story because you'll probably tell it better than I will.
Well, there were two brothers, Mike and Tim Humphrey, and I think it was Tim that kept getting his cabin messed with and his outdoor freezer broken into, and deer parts being stolen. So he just said, "You know what? The hell with this! I'm gonna see about shooting these son of bitches." So he was set up. He and his brother would go out on their front porch and sit there and take pot shots of these Bigfoot. You know, they didn't really know what they were dealing with at first.
And it did become aggressive to the homestead. It became aggressive to the property.
And when they figured out what they had, they contacted the BFRO.
Yeah.
Right. Another talking point that just
go ahead.
came up here. I don't want to derail it, but Jamie brought up a good point about, do you believe they, being Bigfoot or Sasquatch, avoid technology like infrared trail cams and so on? You know, my opinion on that, you know, it kind of fits right into this whole subject in which we're talking about. Has your thought process changed on that at all? That maybe they're able to see infrared and just stay away from it. It seems in a lot of cases that the moment the trail cams went up, the activity stopped. I don't know that they're smart enough to know what it is, other than a tree should not be giving off infrared light and it can pick it up or sense it, because other animals do see in the infrared spectrum. And it just is unnatural for a tree to be giving off infrared light, and we'll stay away from it because we don't know what it is. That's possible.
So
Go ahead, Bake.
if I might, so I bought a trail cam because where I bought some land and there's no internet out there, and I just wanted to keep an eye on the property. So I bought one, and so I was messing with it the other day, and honestly, like, trail cams aren't as unobtrusive as you think they are. Like, there are lights come off it, there's a spotlight on top when it flashes, and then on the bottom there's a video feed. So honestly, like, a creature or something that has a thought process would be like, what is the TV stuck to the tree? Why is that there? You know, like a bear might not notice it, a deer might not notice it, but we're saying this is a cognitive thing.
Right.
There's a point where it'd be like, first of all, the tree smelled funny because they were messing with it. I saw them kind of messing with it, and now it's giving off a weird light. I think I should just stay away from it. You know, and because they're not, you know, everybody thinks, oh, well, you put a trail cam up or you put a drone up. They all make something. And they also, they change the environment in one way or another. Because, like, when I put the trail cam up this morning, I cut like 3 branches to get them out of the way. And like, when I noticed it went off in the truck, like, this big spotlight goes off in the truck, and then there's a little video of me screaming at it, you know, trying not to die. You know, so, like, I think we have to look at the possibility that, yes, technology is amazing. We're not looking at, like, governmental level, you know, Rainbow Six, you know, kind of stuff where, oh, you could put it in a tree and nobody will ever notice it for years. You're looking at, I think I paid $60 for the thing, and if it doesn't explode or burn down the forest, I'll be amazed. You know?
But you also have to look at that even if it doesn't notice, the camera doesn't put out light, and Brian, I posted his comment in the room, it emits frequency and sound.
Yeah.
And those are what a lot of these animals are a little bit more in tune to.
Right.
This can see in the infrared spectrum, which I don't know if any other primate can. That might be another answer for another show.
Right.
It
But
still
there are
should
mammals that can.
yeah,
Not primate, but there are mammals that can. Yes.
yeah, we can't.
Right.
Yeah. So, but can we? Are we sensitive to frequency? Do they use a different frequency to communicate than we do? People thought that. Bill Drengenis, my good late friend, created the I Gotcha cam. That was to eliminate frequency as much as it could to get, and for use on not just land but also underwater, images of these cryptids, right? And I seen the prototype. I don't know if it was ever successfully deployed long term, but that was the forward thinking Bill had to approach this. Obviously it can detect the technology, whether it sees it or it feels it or hears it. It's there, and how do we overcome that? Well, we get ingenuitive, and that's the advantage we have that this creature just doesn't have. And it might be clever, but does it have our ability to adapt and overcome? I don't know. We just
True.
have to be smarter than it. But to James' point, the game cam he bought, whether it blows up and burns the woods down, there's different levels of sophistication between game cameras too. Whether it was the $29.99 camera you get at on sale at Harbor Freight, or the $1,000 units that have cellular backup and send it to your phone. There are different types of cameras with different purposes out there. I don't think we should be afraid of technology. I just think we have to be cautious about how we use it and deploy it, because I do think there is some level of understanding of what it is.
Right. And
Also,
there's
to the point,
there's also been a
the
lot
point-
of footage where bears have come up to the camera, and it was just a matter of gnawing on the plastic because it was the petroleum in the plastic that attracted the bear,
The
and
scent,
they're gnawing on
right?
it. They don't know what it is. Yeah, they picked up the scent and they just chew on it. Okay, well, they knew it was there. They don't understand what it is. That's all my
But
point.
to take it a little bit more primitively, you see somebody pointing something at you, as a Bigfoot creature, you're in the woods and you see this. What's the difference between a telephoto lens barrel being looked at you and a shotgun or a rifle? If you are more primitive and don't have that understanding, are you going to stick around and see what that thing's going to do for you? I wouldn't. And,
Right.
you don't have to, I'm not a genius, but you don't have to be, high caliber understanding to realize these got point something at you, it could boom, and I could not be here because you've seen it happen before.
Well, putting
So
it
that-
into that, perspective that if these things are out there, that they would have seen the hunting season. They understood what a boomstick is. It makes perfect sense. Even deer understand that. Deer move out in hunting season too. Some don't because they're not as bright, but there are deer that will move out of that area along with other wildlife. And if they understand and see a boomstick and what it does and then knock that animal down, they're going to avoid that altogether. Yes.
Yeah. Bears like
Yep.
that stuff. Rockite Man from YouTube, watching over on YouTube. There are vids on YouTube of people who live in or next to undeveloped land, and they feed wildlife that comes to their property. It's free food. And, I go back to something that Mrs. A said to me, that they were opportunistic. And that's true. They are going to find whatever they can. And we go back to this Hanubi, Oklahoma, to the deer being missing out of the freezer and the deer parts going missing. And, we go back to a lot of these stories. A lot of it is revolving around food. Not so much shelter, but food and curiosity. And that's animals to a T, right? That's even us. You know?
That's us. We'll Uber our food in because we're lazy. And why
That's
expend the
right.
energy if the food's right there? Yeah, it's a matter of convenience.
And again, guys, this episode wasn't supposed to be all encompassing. It was just some changing perspectives, right? Like, how have we changed our mind on some of these things over time? And I think we've all used some fair examples of how we changed our mind and opinions based on some things and methodologies. And, this isn't the first episode we'll have on this. Of course, we'll have more. Guys, we do take your sighting reports and encounters and we send them out to our friends or we investigate them ourselves. Send them to us. Go to SasquatchExperience.com and click on the Report It link, and we will take your sighting reports because we are all, for the most part, active field investigators. We do enjoy this more than talking about it. We do get out in the field and participate.
Sure we do.
Well, some of us do. You're trying to survive in the concrete jungle of Chicago.
Yeah, thanks.
So maybe not so much you out there, but
no, there's scarier monsters here than out in the woods. Trust me.
That's the truth. That's the truth. Of course, our Patreon guys, go and support that. Dr. Squatch, go to our website, SasquatchExperience.com, and click on the banner, Dr. Squatch, to support. We've been selling a lot of soap, guys.
And we all smell good.
And we do smell good.
Yeah,
And this week, I'm back on the, I'm on the coffee scent this week. The cold brew cleanse. That's what I'm using. And if you haven't, get that shampoo and conditioner. It's really good for it. Man, I tell you what, I've had silkier hair. You just can't get over it. It feels so good and so natural.
Yes, Rapunzel Forker.
Beautiful. How about it? Why don't you guys tell folks where they can find you?
Go ahead, Bake. Where you at?
Go ahead, James.
I'm that sweet-smelling guy of pine tar.
Yeah, he is.
Honestly, if you find Forker, usually he'll tell you where I happen to be because he's a rat like that. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll find me.
He'll give it up.
I'll sell your ass for a pack of Luckies, absolutely.
Yep.
Henry, where can folks find you, bud?
I'm on Facebook, Henry B. May the 4th. I'm also on Twitter, Mr. May09.
Oh,
Nice.
How about that? He's tweeting
Taking
again.
notes.
Vance?
Taking notes. I'm here in the, let's see, living in Chicago is the ultimate survival skill. Well, I appreciate the compliment because yes, it is. But yeah, I'm here at Studio 401 behind the palm tree here. You can find me on Facebook at Vance A. Nesbitt. We all know what the A means. And over on Instagram at Vance_Nesbitt_STF News.
Yeah, that's news, not nudes, not STF nudes.
Send
for the record.
news.
Folks, I do hope you enjoyed tuning in tonight for some fun and good conversation regarding our changed opinions. You can go and comment on all our posts, Sasquatch Experience on Facebook, Instagram, Squatch EXP on Twitter. We are a socially active group. We love to talk Bigfoot, so feel free to join in on the conversation. Join our Patreon for as little $2 a month, patreon.com/Sasquatch Experience. And of course, I'm Sean Forker. You can find me everywhere on social media. I am my name. I don't hide behind an alias. You can find me, and I also am pretty approachable for the most part. Not always, but generally. And just thanks for tuning in, guys. We do love you, and we do like to thank our Patreon supporters once again.
Thank you, guys.
Our executive producers, Brian Corbin and Tom Mihok, of course, always great supporters of the show, and Gail Fredericks and Kevin Casey, members of the Hollers Club, $2 to make you hollers. And join that club, folks. We will see you next week. Henry, take us home.
Y'all be good at it.
Good night, everybody.